some of the world's biggest tech companies, crossing their products off its state purchase list, even while adding thousands made by smaller domestic players. The biggest casualty, U.S. network equipment maker Cisco, once with 60 products on the central government procurement center's list, now none. And heavyweights like Apple, Intel security firm McAfee, and Citrix all dropped. So what's it all about? Some point to Edward Snowden and his revelations about the NSA's relationship with telecom companies. But there could be another, more compelling motive. Reuters tech correspondent Paul Karsten.
There is an outspoken policy by China's leaders to champion domestic technology and to procure more of it and possibly at the same time get rid of Western technology. Now, some experts say there's a huge risk here, but China is actually shooting itself in the foot in terms of national information security, in that it's getting rid of foreign, often better, higher quality, more secure equipment in favor of domestic vendors purely because it's made in China.
The winners in this game, Chinese telecom giant Huawei, smaller competitor ZTE, and lots of bit players in the information security market. An unnamed source told Reuters that China's ultimate goal was not just to nurture these companies, but also support their expansion overseas. The answer to this dilemma for foreign companies could be to focus on a different crowd.
China is just too big a market for any Western companies to ignore, whether they're selling to the state sector, to private enterprises, or to everyday consumers. The thing about the consumer market is that not only is it growing, but it's less subject to the whims of China's government and the state overall. And companies like Apple are a great example of that, which have huge success here in reaching everyday buyers despite what the state might prefer.
Let's speak to independent financial analyst Yannick Naud. What's going on here? Is it part of this increasing pattern of retrenchment into domesticness for China?
Well, I think China, in all of the industrial, they have an industrial policy, and for the industrial policy, they need to protect their own industry. They have been doing so in many types of industry. And I think in terms of telecom, in terms of IT, in terms of technology, it's one of the latest examples of this kind of protectionism. For example, not too long ago, back in September last year, the bank regulator issued some new constraint for bank to use only some Chinese system or Chinese database and so on. Okay. So as you see, in terms of government, the supply for the government or the corporation, the rules are changing in order to favor Chinese companies.
Is there a security risk of any description, do you think, as that report suggested?
Well, it is possible. I mean, in some specific area, it's true that the level of sophistication is lower in China compared to what we have in Europe or in the US. Time will tell. What is important is that step by step, the government is trying to close access to a European or American company. So far, as your program said, consumer goods are sold very well. I mean, Apple is selling extremely well in China. It's one of the biggest markets, even though, for example, subsidies by China Telecom has been cut last year by $2 billion. Even with that, Chinese consumer wanted to have more foreign goods.
Is this also part of a pattern where companies like GlaxoSmithKline have found themselves being investigated for bribery, whether it took place or not?
Yes, I mean, as a government, you have to champion your own industry. And in China, you have another example. It's like they try to push partnership between foreign player and domestic player, as we have seen, for example, in the auto industry. And it's been working very well in the auto industry. So companies have to be a bit smarter now when they approach the Chinese market and try to see what is the best way to approach the market directly as a competitor, through a partnership or going through another Chinese importer that will represent the product.
Seems a long time since we spoke about China. Just generally speaking, how's the soft landing coming along, do you think?
Well, if you look at the main problem in China, it's still the shadow banking. We still have enormous amount of debt, which is less controlled by the government. All in all, so far, I think the process is under control, even though China is not growing as quickly as it.
Yannick Naud, stay with us, but thanks for the moment.